What is up, everybody? Welcome to another recap video here on Touchline Talk. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I am putting out every single week. Game 2 for the U.S. Women's National Team in the World Cup, a 1-1 draw with the Netherlands. Obviously, this is going to be the real test of the group stage, the game where you're measuring where this team is at, hypothetically heading into the knockout stage. 1-1 draw in the end. Really a game of two halves, as much as that's a cliche. And I'm going to start the same spot I started after the Vietnam game. That first half was a perfect illustration of why Julie Ertz is playing in the midfield in the best version of this team. You couldn't have asked for better proof as to what this team is still missing. And I'll get to the attacking part in a little bit, but to me, this is the story. Ertz is playing center back again, and the U.S. just gets overrun in the midfield in that first half. And it's the Netherlands. The Netherlands might have the most clearly defined style of play and tactical philosophy of any country on the planet. There's a name for it. It's called total football. You got to know what you're getting into when you play them. And the U.S. was just simply not prepared or unable to execute the game plan because what they were doing in the first half was not working. And so Andy Sullivan jumps out after getting there a little bit late anyway on the passage of play that ultimately leads to the goal. The space opened up because she got beat. It's just one example. It's just one play. But I have a hard time believing that play develops the same way if Julie Ertz is in that number 6 position. You're just going to have a hard time convincing me it's the same result. And Julie Ertz is also one of the few players in the world who can make an impact that makes it feel like she is two players in midfield because of her physicality, her ability to win the ball back, her passing, all of the things that she brings. That's what the U.S. needed in this game, was somebody that could kind of do the job of two people. And that player was playing center back. And so you give up the goal. There's very little going on in the attack in the first half. And it's 1-0 at halftime. I also want to give a shout out to Savannah DeMello because I don't know how many more minutes she's going to get if Rose Lavelle is healthy enough to play from the start against Portugal. But for all of the criticisms you have of the U.S. in that first half, and there are plenty, Savannah DeMello was all over the place. She had that flick. You saw her technical ability, drawing fouls, winning the ball back. It just seemed like when anything was actually happening, she was somewhere involved. And she had that chance that she put wide. Could have done better with that. But for a group that lacked intensity in the first half, she was the one player that stood out and was really making things happen, even if it wasn't perfect. So I wanted to give her the credit she deserves because I was impressed. Doesn't necessarily mean the best version of this team has her in the starting lineup because of what happened when she got subbed. But coming in and doing your part, that's what Savannah DeMello did. So I want to take a minute to recognize that. Then you get to the second half. And the game turns pretty dramatically. The Dutch definitely won the tactical battle in the first half. Rose Lavelle comes in at halftime. U.S. wins the tactical battle in the second half and is able to establish some control, keep possession of the ball, and you don't see what you saw in the first half, which was the Dutch playing through that midfield really, really easily. The U.S. really starts applying some pressure. And so that is something to take away here and to note is Vlatko Andonovski and that coaching staff got the tactics wrong at the beginning, but they were able to fix it, and it got much better in the second half. That is a positive sign getting later into this tournament against top-tier opposition like the Dutch. This team isn't just going to be able to coast by anybody. We are in a new reality where teams like the Netherlands and teams that have even more talent than the Netherlands are not afraid of this team. They are capable of playing from a talent perspective. So you're going to have to be able to adjust when things go wrong, because it's not always going to be pretty and it's not always going to be easy. So that was a positive to see the U.S. go into the locker room, regroup, and look much better in the second half. Rose Lavelle did her thing again. It's just a question of whether she's healthy or not in terms of when she's going to get into the starting lineup. They are just a different team with her on the field. That's become abundantly clear. That's also a concern with that front three, that still there were moments you saw the individual talent, and that's really what I came away from this game thinking about from a front three perspective. You saw Sophia Smith and Trinity Rodman running through the defense, taking players on, just going 1v3 and winning. You saw some really good individual moments from Alex Morgan, holding the ball up. You know, I think there was a header, if I remember correctly, at one point that was kind of a through ball, knocking a ball down to go play somebody through. I think it was Rose Lavelle. It's just not cohesive. There's just not a lot of synergy there. And that's what's got to get figured out. Because we know this team has the individual talent. You got to make life easier for yourself by creating some opportunities and not having to do everything by yourself. That's the next level that separates you from everybody else, is the fact that you don't need a really good passage of play to create a goal. You can create a goal out of nothing. But you got to get the easy ones too. And that's still not coming for this team. I mean, you get the goal on a header off a set piece, which is a strength of this team. It's part of the offense. But the goals still are not coming very easily. That's the other part of this that needs to get fixed, although it's much more difficult to fix. And that's the ultimate frustration I have right now. The attack is just difficult. It's the hardest thing to do in the sport. And this group hasn't played together all that often, right? This isn't a club team. This is Alex Morgan playing with two young players. Trinity Rodman hasn't typically been in the starting lineup because Mallory Swanson was there. That is something that can grow and develop over the tournament now that these players are working together every day for, this month or however long they stay in the tournament. The other part of this is fixable from a lineup standpoint, and that is just getting Julia Ertz in midfield. And I will be very interested to see if this game changes Vlatko Andonovski's opinion on this. Because if this one doesn't, I don't think anything will. It was so glaring how much the U.S. missed her in midfield in that first half. The other thing I want to mention, I also just don't get the one sub. This is the deepest team in the world. It only seems logical to me that you try and take advantage of that. And the counter argument is, and I do buy this, that they were playing so much better that you didn't want to mess with what was going on. My big pet peeve, one of my biggest frustrations in this sport, is when teams lose control of a game and refuse to substitute to try and change the status quo and try and regain momentum. That is not what you saw here. Things were getting better and better and better. And so there is a rational argument to be made about why you don't make subs. I just fundamentally look at that bench and say it's one of your great advantages. Use it. Especially when it's not like that attack was superb for 90 minutes. Get some fresh legs, get some new ideas in there. See if Alyssa Thompson can create something. See if Lynn Williams' pace can make something happen. I just don't understand that part. Although I'm not as frustrated by it as I would be in a different situation, because the U.S. were gaining more and more control of the game as opposed to losing control. Ultimately, to me, it's a fair result. It was what the U.S. needed to stay atop this group. I mentioned this in the live show Wednesday night. The way that this is playing out, it's more and more important that you win that group. because of the talent that's going to be in the bottom half of that bracket, you can set yourself up for the best path you could ever ask for to the semifinals if you win this group, the way things are going right now. And so the U.S. have given themselves that opportunity with the Lindsey Horan equalizer. Ultimately, they deserved the point. To me, they didn't deserve any more. But it wasn't like this was dominated by the Dutch from start to finish. Both teams had a half where they won the tactical battle and they were in control. Each team walks away with a point. And I mentioned this, I'll finish on this point again. You're seeing that teams are not scared of the U.S. This is a new reality we are living in where they are one of the top teams in the world. But there is a group now. It is not everybody versus the U.S., everybody trying to take the U.S. down. That is just a reality people need to wrap their minds around. So games like this are going to happen. There are going to be more of these if you're going to win a World Cup. It's not going to be a walk in the park all the way. There are too many good teams now. This is what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be incredibly challenging from the group stage onward. And that's what you're starting to get with this tournament. And you're seeing it more and more that, this is not a U.S. team at the peak of its power. This is a team in transition with all of these young players who are going to be even better 4 years from now. And so you have some super talented, super experienced teams like the Dutch, like England, like Germany, who are going to make this really difficult for the U.S. to three-peat. There's nothing I come out of this game freaking out about. The result is not all that concerning to me. My big thing is there is a glaring problem in midfield that could be addressed with this roster by using it differently, and that has not happened. That is something you can control. You can't always control how things look in attack and, the way the ball bounces. You are in control of the lineup and trying to fix that problem that has happened time and time again over the past couple of years against top-tier opposition. It happened again. Now we're going to have to wait and see if Vlatko Andonovski does anything differently. That is all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time.